Okay, so it is officially 10:10 and the official start of this breakout session. I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Celestina Ugamadu, and I'm a TMT2 student studying business technology management. I'd like to use this avenue to welcome everyone to this breakout session. And I'm very excited today because we're going to be listening to Catherine and we're going to be listening from her wealth of knowledge. And I hope that at the end of this session, we would have one or two things that we can take and apply in our daily lives. After the presentation, we would have some time for questions and answers. This session is going to be for 50 minutes. So after Catherine is done with her presentation, then we'll take some questions and then she's going to answer them. The chat box, the questions will go in the chat box, just located by the right-hand panel of your screen. And I'll take the questions from there and I'll ask Catherine and she's going to answer them for us. So now I'm going to be introducing Catherine to everyone. Catherine Chassanite is running the Executive MBA and a full-time international MBA program at the Audencia University in France. Both programs are part of Audencia's MBA and DBA community. As an executive coach, Catherine has been able to build bridges across programs and alumni to foster cross-disciplinary projects. Catherine joined Audencia in 2008 with a focus on international career coaching that included overseeing the career development module and facilitating sessions in the MBA program. Prior to moving to higher education, she studied on 2 continents, worked across 3 countries in various sectors such as the FMCG, IT, telco, PPP, which means public-private partnership, and also as a HRO and talent acquisition professional. She holds a master's degree in foreign languages and literature. Catherine, we are so excited and delighted to have you here with us, and we look forward to learning from you today.
Thank you very much, Celestina. It's my pleasure to be with you here live from France, with the grey skies at the end of a day for us. So
Yeah.
I want this to be a very interactive moment. So I hope we can exchange at the end, as Celestina mentioned, and also before that.
Yes, I wish we could say the same here from Winnipeg. Unlike France, here we have the cold really was much today. Like it's about minus 33 degrees centigrade this morning, and it's really good. So we'll just jump right into the presentation. Catherine, if that's okay by you.
Just before we jump into the presentation, I wanted to share with you what inspires me, because it's the theme of today, right? So what really inspires me is nature. I think nature is always something I look towards when I'm in doubt, because of a few things I want to share with you. Nature inspires me because everything is connected, everything is interdependent, the trees, the soil, the light, the air, the water. So I believe that we are all interconnected. We're one living elements in nature. I also enjoy the fact that nature is all about evolving, changing, transforming. And I truly believe as human beings, we're also part of that. Our whole life is a transforming experience. I also, when in doubt, I also like to be reminded that nature is all about polarity. So in order for us to enjoy the cold, it's because we also have sometimes hot days. In order for us to enjoy the night and the stars, it's because we can also remember that sometimes we see the sun glaring at us. So it's also when some things go bad in our lives, to think, okay, there's going to be a silver lining, and nature inspires me towards that. So I just wanted to share that with you, because sometimes we are too connected, we're too digital. I know it's one of my challenges, and just looking out through the window, seeing some natural elements helps me towards a good day.
Well said. I like that. Okay. So I will present the presentations. So you can just get it started with. Yeah.
Thank you.
Just a second, everybody. Can we all see my slide okay? Yeah.
I can. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
So you will see the connection between what I just said about nature and the title of this presentation, The Tree of Life. It's something that I often do in coaching. That is a way to explore yourself. If you want to take a piece of paper and start doing it with us, that would be fantastic. If you want to just listen in, that's also okay. But I thought it would be interesting to get you acting as opposed to just listening. So let's go with it. So first of all, I invite you to draw a tree and make sure you draw a very complete tree. Make sure you have room for the roots. Make sure you have room for the trunk, for branches, the leaves. If you want to draw some fruits, you're totally welcome to do so. Make sure it's a tree that resonates with you, that you like. Maybe it's a tree that you've seen. Maybe it's a tree from where you grew up. Maybe it's a tree from a picture. But make sure you have a nice big tree, probably on an A4 in front of you. If you have colored pencils, feel free to use that as well. You can always make it more colorful later on. And I will stay quiet for a minute as you finish drawing the tree. Celestina, you're doing it?
Yes, I am.
Cool. I hope you're all doing it. I can't see a lot of your faces and names, but anybody who's up there, feel free to do it. Sorry. All right. So the first thing, when you look at this beautiful tree, it's thinking back a little bit. The roots of a tree are the elements that make it really anchored. So it's everything that you feel is important in your past. So maybe the people who looked after you when you were younger. Maybe it's a moment that was defining for you. Maybe it's an event that was particularly important to you. Maybe it's something that you know has nourished you again and again from your past. Maybe it's one of your sources of energy. It's really trying to make a connection between when you are today and where you came from. So maybe something that helped you define the way you are today and the way you decided on this, the studies that you're doing or what you want to do in the future. So really, what makes you anchored? What's rooting you in your experience? The idea is not necessarily to think hard. I think that in this case, you can really trust your intuition and just try and say, okay, if I close my eyes and I think about things that were important to me, when I was 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, what jumps out? Really trust your gut on that one. And then we'll slowly move up the tree. So this is interesting in the sense of what will help your tree grow, we all are very familiar with the drought, with whatever, we need to add on sometimes to the soil for it to be really fertile. So think about that. What is going to help you make your own tree, your own experience more fertile? What is necessary for you? What is it that you absolutely need in order to grow, in order to be fulfilled? Okay. So I don't want to influence you, but it's just to give you some options. Sometimes people tell me they need a sense of purpose. Other people will say they need to make sure that they have what it takes to look after their loved ones. Other people will say, I need somewhere where I can impact my community. Some people will say, I need an environment where I can be challenged and grow and transform. I want to work in a team. I want to be an expert. So I want to be able to lead maybe a more simple life and have less impact. I mean, impact on in the sense of not encourage over consumerism if it's something that's a concern. So really, what is essential to you? What is absolutely essential to you? And then we can go back on our tree now that we looked after the soil. So this is where you really look at yourself, and now is the moment to be not humble, but really celebrate your own success, blow your own trumpet. So what makes your tree so strong? You know, what are your qualities? What are your strengths? What is it that people often pay you a compliment on? What is it that maybe other people praise you for? You know, what is it that gives you this strength? What is it that you're good at? Could also be your values. What is it that helps you stand up straight and, you know, go through those moments of doubts? Think about that. And that usually on the trunk takes a lot of space. You know, what are your skills? What are your strengths? Now that you're in your students, it's interesting to get that feedback from your peers, maybe from your professors, from other lecturers and educators, and really pay yourself with the compliments as well. It's not always easy to find that about yourself, but it's a good moment to explore. Think also not only of hard skills, but also of everything that's transferable, maybe things that you've done through sports, through arts, through other activities that you can definitely put towards your professional life, like, you know, being team spirited, being able to work towards a result, being able to deal with competition, being able to be creative. All of those fantastic things that you've done in other environments, not just in an academic environment. Perseverance is a strong one, for example. Okay, then we're going to move up the tree. The branches. So you can see in this metaphor, the branches are reaching up to the sky. They're already, you know, expanding. So this is where we look at after. This is where we look at what's next for you. So you can draw branches and think, what are your professional expectations? What are your dreams? Where is it that you would want to see yourself grow? Where is it that you want to join a team, join a company, join a project? What is it that you want to contribute to? So in this example, since I think it's appropriate to stay in a professional environment, but if you wanted to do something a bit more personal, you would do the same. You would have professional branches and you would have personal branches. But for the sake of this session, I think it's interesting for you to focus on your professional aspirations. So imagine once you graduate, you know, in the first few months, what is it that you want to do? And then in the first few years, what is it that you want to do? And then maybe, you know, few decades down the line, where do you see yourself? Okay, we're going to move on to the next part. The leaves are an important part of the tree as well. And the idea is to be able to identify and recognize your support network. You remember when I talked about nature at the beginning, I said that everything is connected, that we're interdependent, and that's really one way of seeing it with the leaves. It's really people around you you could go to as a support network. It's also people who potentially inspire you. You know, people that you think, okay, that TEDx that I watched, that really was a game changer for me because that opened a new avenue for me. Maybe it's a professor that you spoke to and you think, okay, that class really made me aware of one thing or another. Obviously, you have friends, you have family, you have maybe athletes, you have other people around you that you think, okay, that person for me is someone that I consider to have an impact on my life, whether it's someone that I know personally, that I hang out with on a daily basis, or someone that is more away from me, but I feel somehow a connection to because of what we share in terms of interest, you know, that type of person. And again, you know, as many leaves as possible. A little side note, maybe those people don't even know that you consider them to be inspirational. So once we've done this, you know, in a few days or in a few hours, drop them a note and maybe say, hey, by the way, I was asked in this weird session to identify people that I really feel are important, and you were one of them. I just want you to know that you're important in my life. It's one of those little things that make a difference. Yeah, I'm just looking at the slides. People who make you happy, that's really important. You know, people who are always able to get a smile or a laugh out of you. You know, it's important to have those as well around, right? And then we can move on. This is another one that is kind of important, I think, for us to do once in a while. It's in the spirit of gratefulness, you know, it's trying to say, okay, what is it that's the fruits in my trees? What is it that I've already harvested? What is it that I would consider as something I was given, chances I have been given, achievements that I've made that I was, you know, proud of, but mostly what is it that I've been given, you know, moments where I've gotten help, things that I would see as gifts from life, whether you're spiritual or not. It's just, you know, the spirit of gratefulness is important. You know, it could be health because of what we've been through. Could be the ability to smell some hot chocolate. I know I was speaking to someone who hasn't been able to smell anything for the last 2 years because of COVID-19. So it's maybe something I wouldn't have considered a gift of life 2 years ago. Now I do. You know, could be little things, could be big things. But what is it that you can already be grateful for? Okay. Moving on. All right, you're done drawing the tree. So, how do you feel now that you've done that? When you look at it, what what does it inspire? I don't know if Celestina, you're comfortable sharing anything, or if you can open to the chat box. Feel free.
Yes, I think at this point we can all write in the chat box what we feel by looking at our trees, and I'll have the chance to talk about them or to read them out after the presentation. Because right now I don't have access to the chat right now. I'm looking at the presentation, but as soon as we're done with the presentation, I would have opportunities to talk about that from what each and every one of us has put in the chat box. So let's drop them in the chat box, please, for now.
Thank you. Thank you. The way we use this tool is, as I mentioned, to kind of like have this journey and to look. And then we always, in coaching sessions, we always think of, okay, look back at the projects that you have, look at your branches and think, what is the one thing that you want to maybe start to get a little bit more proactive about. So the next step would be to pick a branch and say, okay, that is a project, a dream, something that I'm keen to work on. What would my first step be? How can I start moving towards that project becoming a reality, that dream turning into a project, and then you go back on your trail and you say, okay, well, if that's my project, what strength can I rely on? Then maybe you go on your soil, you go, okay, how can I make sure that my tree is going to, get what it needs in order to achieve that project? You can look at your leaves as well. Where is my support network? How will my branch be able to, be carried by the leaves, in a way? So it's really a way to kind of like make an inventory of everything about your life, but I think in a more poetic way than an Excel spreadsheet, and also to have that as a sort of inspiration from a day-to-day basis. And I remember, doing it with some people, and we really took an hour and a half to do it. So I think just the drawing the tree part took 10 minutes per person, 15 minutes, and it was on a big A3, and they really put a lot of passion and creativity into it. So I think that I'm sure you also put a lot of passion and creativity into it today, but it's just to give you an idea that, if ever you want to do it again and give yourself a bit more time, I think it's very important to give yourself time. That can work that way as well. So that's what I wanted to share with you, in the sense of you yourself can be an inspiration. It's also something you can do with a bunch of friends. It's easy to run a session. It's easy to just ask people to draw a tree and then ask a few questions. You've got the PowerPoint there, so it's not copyrighted or anything. It's a tool that's used around the globe. So feel free to start doing that with your friends now and see what comes. And I'm keen to hear, if you want, give your tree a title. Some people do that as well. So some people use a connection with the past, sometimes to connect into the future. If you have a symbol, if you have anything that you want to attach it to, now is a good time to do so. Symbols are very strong. They're very strong in the way they anchor us. And if you give it a certain nickname, every time that nickname comes around, you will be reminded of your tree. So it's a nice, from a neuroscientific point of view, it's also a nice way to keep your tree going inside you. Thank you, Celestina. Thanks a lot for your contribution.
Thank you, Catherine. So at this point, I will stop sharing my presentation and open up the chat box to read out all that we have so far. Okay, so I see so many things in the chat box, and I'll just give shout outs to everyone who has put in something there. I see Gustavo said, really bad drawer. So I don't think it's about how good you are, but it's the message behind it. So well done, Gustavo. Chun Yin said, helping people to do better. Kuldeep said, spread positive vibes. I'm all for that. Nothing like a good laugh to make you feel better. Yes. Very good tool. As many philosophers said, know yourself. Yes, I think self-awareness is the key to everything. If you're able to know yourself very well, then you can tell your strengths, you can tell your weaknesses, and you can tell areas for improvement. Roberta says, looking at my tree, I feel grateful and inspired.
Thank you, Rebecca. Just a quick comment on what you said about self-awareness. It's so important. I agree. And I think what I've seen, after so many years working with people on their self-awareness is that for me, it's a nice balance between doing it on your own and really asking for feedback. I think it's really interesting to see yourself in other people's eyes as well. Also, sometimes because, as I mentioned briefly, we're not always aware of our true strengths or talents. Sometimes it seems so obvious that certain things are done that way. We don't even realize that we're good at it. So make sure it's not a way of fishing for compliments. It's more, seeking feedback, really saying, okay, whenever you do a project with some of your other students, colleagues, you say, hey, what did you enjoy about, working on this project with me? What would you say are some of my strengths? What did I bring to the team? And it's interesting because it's self-awareness is partly how I view myself, but it's also how others see me. And I really encourage you to do both.
Thank you, Catherine. So many messages in the chat box. I may not be able to go through each and every one of them, but I really appreciate that everyone is participating and dropping in their thoughts. So right now, I think we will need to go into questions and answers. So if you have questions for Catherine, please drop them in the box, and I will ask her. And we definitely know she would give us some good insights on those questions. So let the questions keep coming now, and then I'll start first by asking a question to Catherine while we wait for other people to put it in the chat. So Catherine, my first question for you today is, it says, describe some of the most personally rewarding efforts throughout your work history.
Well, that's a big question. Thank you, Celestina. I think that the most rewarding has been to encourage people on this self-awareness journey. I can think of one person, for example, probably in the first few years where I was coaching MBA students, who was a little bit reluctant to embark on this whole, discover yourself, speak about, your values, speak about your motivations. For this student, it was all about getting my resume right, getting the interview right, getting the job, and that's it. And that person didn't get their first choice career option, went through a bit of a personal crisis, managed to do something else. And when I saw them again a few years later, this alum was like, you know what? I realize now why it's important to think about values and motivations. And now all the sessions we did together start to make sense. And that was to me a very rewarding moment because it was about planting the seed and accepting that maybe that person didn't share my interest for whatever I was lecturing on, but in the end, the result was there. So it's about patience and perseverance as well, and accepting that we don't always view things in the same way, and so be it. But not trying to convince people by all means. That would be one of my stories.
Okay, sounds good. The next question I have here in the chat box is from Chen, and it says, what if the branches conflict with each other? What if the branches conflicting with other branches? Yes.
That's a good question, Chen. So I think it's really this idea of probably going back a little bit down on your tree and saying, okay, what is it that I most need? Which branch is the most important in my life? If you think of a tree, people trim it once in a while. So you might have a branch that is there, and then the following year it's not. So I think it's completely okay to say, okay, today this is my tree with all my branches, and then decide which one is the one that I want to see grow. And maybe you have indeed two projects. So I think one of the things will be choosing which one you want to focus on first. It doesn't mean that the other one needs to be trimmed, but focusing your efforts and saying, okay, maybe it's like a feasibility study. Which project is realistically the most likely to materialize? Or maybe it's the inspirational, option. Which project is going to be the most life-changing one? So it's always this idea of choosing and then acting towards the achievement, and then time out. Am I making any progress? Yes, no. If not, maybe that project that you were hesitating with is now a good time to pick it up. So balancing act. So I hope I answered your question, John, but this is how I see it. Not trying to do everything at the same time, really focusing on one branch and then another.
So it's all about reevaluating at intervals to be sure you are still on the right track.
Yeah, and
Thank.
also potentially deciding to change track as well.
Okay, sounds good. The next question is from Gustavo. He said, "Very good activity, Catherine. What advices you normally give to make some of the branches become true?"
I think it's really making sure that the leaves are connected to the project. So do you have the support network? Is it aligning with your values and motivation? Is it something that, if you look at your tree a couple of months down the line, is likely to still be there or not? How much of it is really linked also to the experience and the roots? The more interconnected the branches with the rest of the tree, then the more likely it is to materialize. So I think it's really, we talked about decisions and branching. This one is really about aligning and connecting with the rest and seeing the circularity of it, and always thinking, what's my first step, what's my first action? That I don't know if it's just a saying or not, but the question, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So it's this idea of, I have this huge project and it looks like I don't know where to start. Well, start somewhere, start small. Maybe the first thing is talk to people about your project and then get advice, and then maybe, read a book or whatever. So start small, but start. It's, the first step and then the second.
Yes, baby steps. Yes, the next question is from Hamandeep, and she says, "What advice can you give us as a student to always be positive and in high energy to achieve our goals in the presence of many obstacles?"
So, I'm going to tell you not to try to be always positive and high energy. The Earlier on, when I was talking about nature, I was saying that, you need the light and the day and the night, you need the pros and the cons. So you can't always be high energy. I don't think our body is made that way. We need to sleep in order to have energy. So I think there's some basic things like sleep patterns, food, obviously that kind of things, but also welcome that sometimes you have less energy. Also, we're connected to something bigger than us. So probably when there's less light, when it's cold outside, you have less energy, and that's normal. So be willing to accept that. That's part of us. That's part of the living cycle. And then one thing that's super important in order to answer your question is identify what brings you energy. So one question would be, what makes a good day for you? What is it that you've done and you can say, today was a good day? What brings you that energy? What brings you this I don't know, this fuel? Again, it could be something that you either ask people around. I know some of my students, they like to keep a journal, and they could think about what they did in the day and think, okay, when I did that, I felt so pumped after that. I felt so amazing. So it's a way to identify what brings you energy. And then if you know what brings you energy, obviously do a little bit of that every so often and you'll be better. But I really insist on, it's okay to feel horrible some days, and that's also why you're going to feel great other days. If you were always feeling great, you wouldn't know you're feeling great, right? So it's really this idea of there's days with, there's days without. I hope I
Yeah,
answered your question.
you sure did. Just to give a shout out to Leon, he says, "I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times." And this quote is from Bruce Lee. Okay,
Wow.
moving.
Yes, it is an inspiration.
Yeah, yeah. So Sean has a question, and she says, "Thanks, Catherine. That surely helps. Can you share a little with us about the fruit you grew and the branches you chopped off, if that's not too personal to you?"
No, that's okay. Branches, I'll share a very personal branch. I had a dream of having 3 kids. I have 2 kids. And why did I decide not to go with 3? Well, a lot of different things happen. And it's also linked to the gifts. I think that sometimes, life, well, you decide to see signs in your life. And for me, it was, I had a couple of friends around me who had kids and they had some health issues. And I thought, you know what? I have 2 very healthy kids. I'm just going to be grateful for that and not try for 3 and then maybe have other challenges to deal with. So that would be an example. In terms of careers, I can give you another example. Before I joined higher education, so I was I had this branch at one stage of being back in the days, it was my goal to be an EMEA. So that stands for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. That's the way a lot of corporations are structured. They have an EMEA headquarter. So I wanted to be head of recruitment for EMEA for a company. And that happened in the end. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm the end of my branch there. So what do I do next? And it's also something that, some of you maybe are not there, or maybe you've already, you've got a goal and then you reach it. So what happens next? You have this sense sometimes of emptiness. So this is why it's interesting to have a few branches and to always look out for what's happening. And that HR, EMEA, talent role was interesting. But then I moved on to something else, and I had this branch around having a nice corporate life and corporate career. And again, I had a family challenge, so I had to decide what to do. And this is when you go back at the gifts of, what family's done for you, what's important to you, what you need in order for your tree to grow, and you'll make decision. And yes, there's parts of me that regret not having gone the corporate life. I probably would be a lot richer now than working in higher education. But then again, I probably wouldn't have met some of the people that I've met in higher education. So, I will never know, and I'm probably grateful that I'll never know. But that's some of the things I've shared, and some of the I think gifts that I've had the privilege to have in my life. And for me, I really believe that I don't know, meeting people and listening to stories and getting a new perspective on life is really what makes me a better human being. So that's what I want to keep doing.
Thank you. I have one other question for you. It says, what things have you accomplished that yielded the greatest benefits to your career?
I think that daring would be something. So I'll give you an example. I was working in London. Had a good life, good bunch of friends. Everything was interesting, and then I thought I need to do something different. I need something new. So I moved to a country where I didn't speak the language. I didn't know anyone. I just had a job there, and some people told me I was completely crazy to do that. But I thought it was an opportunity to reinvent myself, to try something completely different, to just revisit. And we talked about self-awareness, but sometimes you also, I'm sure some of you have known that when this people who love you tell you you're so much like this, you're so much like that, you're like, I'm not like this, really, I've changed, stop labeling me. So I think that's probably what I felt like. And that really helped, because that made me stronger, more independent. That made me probably realize that a few years down the line, yes, that was a little bit crazy, but that influenced my career, because that helped me prove to my future employers that yes, I could work independently, I could take on a challenge, and look, this is how I achieved on my own, without a network around me. So it gave me this strength, really this strength.
Yeah, I think what you just said now plays a lot to most of us here, as international students, taking that challenge to go to a completely new environment to thrive. I mean, it's really great.
It's great. And I think it's one of the things that you can really celebrate. And if you can do it across cultures, across continents, across language, across academic world, it means that, for you, moving from one company to another will be just easy. Or at least there's a lot of skills that you've grown in that experience of being an international student that you can then transfer. into moving from one company to another. And to add to that, when we speak to recruiters and companies today, they always talk about the cross-disciplinary approach and how can we make people in supply chain understand people in marketing, and how do the sale people work with the operations people. So if you're already used to speaking across cultures, that's really a very, very important strength to put in your resume or in your letters.
Thank you. So I have a question from Kuldeep, and this person says, "Why are we always interested for the things which are important for us? How do we indulge in those things?" Oh, it says, "Why are we uninterested for the things which are important for us? How do we indulge in those things?"
So I'm not sure I understand the question. Do you mean why is it that we don't spend more time on things that are important to us? Is that what I'm supposed
Yes,
to understand? Yeah.
yes, so, yeah,
I think this is a big part of it, right? It's the distraction. And we're all guilty of that. I think we were talking about choices earlier on, and it's really about that. I think it's um, how often do we take the time to really think of what's important to us? How often do we take the time to send a message that's meaningful, where we don't ask for anything in return? We just want to give someone, recognition or something. So it's really how do we build time in our day to do things other than be distracted and be entertained. So I agree with you that it's I think it's some kind of self-discipline. And again, as we said earlier on, we can't always be high energy. It's not like we're not monks, or we're not very wise people with a you know an aura or something, and we're always meditating. That's not how I see myself. But it's just to be able to once in a while take a step back and think, okay, what's important to me today in my life? And I don't know what it was like for you guys, but for me, the last couple of years, I really had that impact, because I really thought back and said, okay, well, what am I grateful for on a daily basis? That's I'm okay, I'm healthy, my loved ones are healthy, we have food. Yeah, anything else is a bonus. And I think, it's easy to get annoyed about the fact that we don't have 5G, that the network is not working, la 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 la. But really, there's more to life. So it comes, I don't think when I was your age, well, smartphones didn't exist, so that was easy. But I think, I was interested in other things other than figuring out what was important in my life. But once in a while, it's when you have a blow, then you kind of like find out what's important. But I think it's good to also figure out what's important when everything goes well, because if you only wait for something bad to happen to you, then it's a tough moment to think clearly.
yeah. So that brings me to my last question for this session. I'm really happy about the participation so far. And my last question will be from Chun. He says, "Back in my ex-employer's place, I met juniors who seem to have no vision of their branches or their fruits. Is there any possible way to make people who are subordinate to you or juniors to you see this vision of theirs? So how do you help people to see their
Yeah,
vision?"
I think so. For me, it's a little bit like what I was saying with this guy who didn't care so much about the sessions 5 years ago, and then 5 years later came and said, "Oh, that changed my life," kind of thing. So I think it's tough to impose what you think is so obvious to others. So one thing that I've seen people do is just share, and just by sharing, what's important to me or what I'm grateful for. So that can already inspire them to do the same. And then it's also maybe reverting the question to those juniors and say, okay, what do you spend your days doing? What's a good day? And you could do it in a you know I guess the way I want to say is authentic, in a way that you're not doing it with a hidden agenda. You're going to be genuinely asking the person, what's important to you in your life. Where is it that you want your life to go to? What directions? And just being curious about the person, not judging, just saying, okay, or sharing when you're surprised by something, like, oh wow, so you're telling me nothing is really important to you. Wow, okay, that's something that I was not expecting. And just seeing sharing your reactions and emotions will bring. I think those conversations need to happen a lot more in the corporate life as well. It's there's a trend around the purpose and impact and ikigai and all of that, but I think it's just if you speak again, maybe you have conferences on neuroscience. I mean, we're wired to have a purpose. We're wired to know why we do stuff and not just fight, flight, freeze, tend, befriend, whatever. It's more than that. We're a bit more complex than that, which is reassuring.
Thank you so much. We would have, I won't be able to take any more questions because we just have 5 minutes to the end of this session. But it's really been great. Thank you, Catherine, for enlightening us. So many informative nuggets for us to imbibe. For me, the tree of life is really new to me. I don't think it may be new to everybody here. I'm sure it may be new to some people, and it may not be new to some people. But for sure, it is definitely good to self-evaluate. From everything you said, there's so many things to learn. The need to reevaluate sometimes, take a pause and be sure that your where you're going to is the right one for you. The fact to take new challenges, you could move it to a new city, but being able to embrace challenges is great. And at this point, I want us to just drop some clap emojis, love emojis for Catherine. It's been really great. Drop them up in the chat box, please. Thank you. Thank you so much. And then to everyone who has joined this session, I want to say a very big thank you. It was really participative, and I like that. Thank you so much. So next up after this breakout session is the networking session. And you can locate that by navigating to the networking icon on your dashboard on the screen. I would have to bring this session to an end at this moment. And once again, thank you, Catherine, for your time and for your for this presentation. And thank you to everybody. I hope you all enjoyed the rest of today. It's
Thank
bye-bye
you.
from me
Look
now.
after yourselves. Thank you. Look
Sure.
after yourselves and embrace your tree.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.